welcome to American Gang Wars. Today we're going to be tapping into the streets of California, and we're going to be taking a dive into a case which involves the dangerous prison gang, the Mexican Mafia. Now the Mexican Mafia, although a prison gang, their power stretches beyond the walls into the streets of California. If an order is given by the Mexican Mafia or a new rule is implemented, these orders are to be obeyed or there will be repercussions. Now, since the early 90s, the Mexican Mafia has implemented street taxes on all Southern California gangs. This rule didn't just apply to gang members, but also to drug dealers who operated in or nearby gang territory controlled by La M. Now, if anyone refuses, typically a green light is put on their head, and that means they mark for death. And that leads us to today's case, a story of a known drug dealer, Robert Rios from Placentia, California. Now, Placentia is not a well-known area compared to other parts of California, but this area is just as violent. Like most other California areas, the Mexican Mafia has its hands in Placentia, which is Orange County. Known gangs in the area are Placentia Vato Locos 13, Barrio La Jola 13, Barrio Atwood, Fullerton Tokers, and Lennox 13, which is a branch off of a Westside LA gang. And there are numerous other barrios out here. Now, Robert Rios was a known drug dealer who stayed on Vista Road near La Jola Street, an area controlled by Barrio La Jola. Now, as a dealer, Rios was ordered to kick back drug shares with the Mexican Mafia. Now, the Mexican Mafia man in charge of Orange County was previously Peter Ojeda, but after his passing, well-respected Johnny Martinez, aka Crow, took over. Now, Martinez is serving time in Salinas Valley for a murder stemming back from the early 1990s. Now, allegedly, according to authorities, it was brought to Martinez's attention that Robert Rios had refused to pay sanctioned tax on his drug dealings in the area. And that refusal is a direct violation which had to be dealt with. And that meant that Rios was now on the bad side of La M. Now, it was not said how many chances or opportunities Rios was given, but allegedly, 4-man squad was put together to go handle the situation. The 4 men included Jacob Cordova, aka Trips, Ricardo Venezuela, aka Solo, Augustine Velasquez, aka Boogie, and another man by the name of Charles Coghill. On January 19, 2017, Coghill allegedly received a phone call from a man known as Greg Munoz, who was in prison at the time, who was Johnny Martinez's number 2 guy. Now, Munoz instructed Coghill to go pick up a silver 300C and guns from a location in Santa Ana. After Coghill got the weapons and picked up the car, he then headed down to Anaheim to pick up Cordova, Velasquez, and Venezuela from a hotel. Afterwards, the men headed down to Placentia, California, to the home of Robert Rios. But on his way there, Coghill had trouble finding the home and had to make a direct call to Munoz, and Munoz will give him exact directions how to get to the house. Once they arrived at Rios' home, Coghill would stay in the car while Cordova, Velasquez, and Venezuela got out the car armed with guns. Now, Rios, being a drug dealer, had his house equipped with cameras from the front to the back, so he's able to see when customers are approaching his home. And as Velasquez and Venezuela and Cordova enter his front yard, he was alerted, and Rios assumed that these men were there to buy drugs. So he came out on his front porch, but soon realized that they were not there to buy drugs. Immediately, Rios was forced on the ground as Cordova and Venezuela went inside the home. Now, Velasquez stood watch, holding Rios at gunpoint. As Rios laid on the ground, he was able to get to his feet, and he immediately bum-rushed Velasquez. Both men began fighting on the ground over the weapon. Now, Venezuela and Cordova heard the fight happening and came running outside the house. And that's when Cordova opened fire, striking Rios in the chest. But also, in shooting Rios, he accidentally shot Velasquez in the leg. Immediately, Cordova and Venezuela helped Velasquez up by pushing him back into the car as Coghill drove off. Now, Robert Rios laid on the ground bleeding from a gunshot wound to the chest. Nearby neighbors were able to call 911, and eventually the EMTs arrived and they would find Rios unconscious on the pavement. The EMTs would rush him to a nearby hospital where he would be pronounced dead. Now, Coghill, Velasquez, and Venezuela all driving back. Coghill will call up Munoz to tell Munoz that Velasquez was accidentally shot, and Munoz was pissed, calling him a fucking idiot. But Coghill, instead of driving Velasquez to a hospital, he would drop him off at home. And from there, Velasquez would call a friend to come give him a ride to the hospital, where he would be treated for his gunshot wound. But as we all know, anytime a victim is treated for a gunshot wound at a hospital, authorities are contacted. And eventually the local sheriff department would show up and questioned Velasquez about his gunshot wound. But Velasquez would tell officers that a black man with a MAC-10 tried to rob him and ended up shooting him. But as officers began to investigate, they would find dry blood on his jacket that would come back to matching the blood of Robert Rios. Now, this mistake by Velasquez would lead to the arrest of Venezuela just days later on January 24th, and Cordova just weeks later on February 1st. And eventually, Coghill will be arrested on April 6th. But after getting out the hospital, Velasquez will be on the run for weeks, being labeled a fugitive before eventually being arrested. Now, all four men, Velasquez, Venezuela, Coghill, and Cordova, would all be charged with burglary and the murder of Robert Rios. Now, Charles Coghill would turn state and become a prosecution's star witness, as he would be given a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. He would give out names and details of the night in question. Two of the names would be Johnny Martinez, the head of the Orange County Mexican Mafia, and his number 2 guy, Greg Munoz. Now, Johnny Martinez would be accused of orchestrating the hit on Rios. Police will comb through cell phone records, and the cell phone records would show that Martinez had contacted Munoz over 3,500 times via cell phone. But the records would also show that Munoz was in contact with Coghill, Cordova, Velasquez, and Venezuela multiple times. And each of these calls were in reference to Robert Rios. All of these men will be indicted, with the exception of Coghill, who took that plea deal. All would be charged with murder, conspiracy to commit extortion, first-degree residential burglary, and street terrorism. But the gang charges would be dropped. Now, the very first person to be sentenced and convicted would be Augustine Velasquez. He will be sentenced to life without parole, but in 2025, he was recently granted a new trial due to a violation of his Miranda rights. As of today, Munoz, Martinez, Venezuela, and Cordova are all waiting trial in relation to Rios' murder. I want to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.